There was one thing that was very fun for me draft night. I was in Ashburn with the assorted Commanders media group, and maybe not in the first round because everybody's kind of a name brand. But as you get into the second, the third, the fourth rounds, more and more of these players you're kind of Googling information on. And one dude whose information we relied on over and over and over was Dane Brugler, draft analyst for The Athletic. And of course, he publishes The Beast every year. Dane, thank you for joining us. I mean this sincerely. I'll give Standig credit because he works for The Athletic, but there were a number of people, not just myself, that whenever Washington drafted somebody, or really kind of it got to a point where whenever someone was drafted, we were just going to The Beast as a reference point to learn more about the player. You deserve a ton of credit for the thing you put together every year.
I appreciate that. That's what I hope people use it as, a resource guide, and it's before the draft, during the draft, and even now after the draft. If people haven't checked it out yet, it's not too late, just be a subscriber to The Athletic and you get The Beast included, and you can get a really an in-depth look at all these guys the Commanders drafted, and then, even, the undrafted free agents, going deep. There's almost 2,000 players in there. So, there's something in there that I think will interest everybody.
I tell you what, since you brought that up, let's start there with the undrafted guys. Anybody really stand out to you? The kid out of Colorado State, the corner that a lot of people were excited about, that Washington paid a little cash for. Anybody? Sam Hartman, the back out of USC. Anybody you like?
Yeah, Anusium, the corner from Colorado State. He created some buzz for himself at his pro day. He had a good week at East West at the Shrine Bowl, and then he didn't get a combine invite. And then he goes at his pro day to be 6'1", 200 pounds, and then to run a 4.3. Wow. You jump 37.5. You have 7.06 3 cone. Like, he tests off the charts. I'm surprised he didn't get drafted, because after that, a lot of 30 visits, a lot of teams started, blowing him up. I thought he was going to go somewhere on day 3. It's just a matter of where. He sneaks through the draft, and he's the type of guy you want to kind of roll the dice on, because the size speed combination is outstanding. The ball production is underwhelming, and that's really why he wasn't drafted, is because once his back's turned to the ball, it's like, okay, it's not natural for him to turn, locate, make a play. But when you have that size speed combination, and you're able to, he's a smart guy. I enjoyed talking to him. He's got an interesting background, and there's a lot to like about him. It's just the lack of ball production was kind of something that was a turnoff. But as an undrafted free agent, you roll the dice on a kid like this. Sam Hartman, I think, he's the type of guy you want in your quarterback room. He has a cap, like he's never going to be more than a backup, but you could do worse for a number 2 or number 3 quarterback spot than Sam Hartman. Really smart guy. Toughness is off the charts. He's competitive. There's a lot to playing quarterback, that even though he doesn't have like high-end physical traits, there's a lot to playing quarterback that he has. And that's the type of guy you want help preparing game plan for next week. You want him in the quarterback room. He's going to make the rest of the room better. And so I like that addition for the Commanders.
So they did. How did you feel that they fared in the draft?
I liked what they did. I mean, obviously, you have the number 2 overall pick. It gives you an advantage. But even with what they did on day 2, having multiple picks on day 2, I thought they maximized a lot of those picks. And I don't do draft grades, but I power rank 1 through 32, my favorite draft classes. And the Commanders they made my top 10, because I thought they let the board fall to them in the second round, especially to get a Johnny Newton at pick 36 is tremendous. And I don't think anybody would have pinpointed defensive tackle as a need for this team. But when we have a new regime in here, new owner, new general manager, new coach, and they want to make up this roster, with high impact guys. And Johnny Newton absolutely is that type of player. So, and my favorite thing about Johnny Newton, aside from, the fact that he's quick off the ball, he's disruptive, my favorite thing about him is he plays more snaps than anybody else. It doesn't matter. First quarter, fourth quarter, it's the same effort, same level of intensity. And you love that about him, no matter what he's dealing with. I mean, he dealt with a foot issue the second half of the season. It didn't matter. He was still giving the same effort every single snap. And so love that pick. Mikey Sainristil still was one of my favorite players in the entire draft. We get so obsessed with length and, all these, size measurables, and it matters. But at the end of the day, give me good football players. That's what I care about. And Mikey Sainristil is one of the best pure football players in this draft. He's a really good athlete. He makes plays on the ball. The background's fun, being a former wide receiver, moving over to defense. But he's a natural. Football comes natural to him. And those are the type of guys you want on your team and guys that are going to help you win. Brandon Coleman was one of my favorite picks. I think he was a little bit of a discount because he was banged up this year, so the tape didn't look as great. But when you go back to 2022, he was the left tackle for a team that advanced all the way to the national championship game. And Coleman at left tackle was a big reason why. So I think when he's healthy, you're able to see how freaky this guy is. So to get him in the third round, I thought was pretty good value. And I think he was like my number 66 player, and I was all ready to defend him because I thought there was a good chance he was going to go even a little bit later, just because I know not everybody loved him. So I was ready. I was going to defend, where I had him, and he went 67 or like one pick after where I had him. So I thought the Commanders, they did a nice job.
Like nearly the exact spot you pegged him at. With Coleman, since you just spoke about him, any question to you that he is a tackle in the NFL?
Sure. Yeah, I think honestly, I see more versatility than tweener. Some guys are kind of stuck in the middle where it's like you're just not quite sure they tackle, they guard. With Coleman, I think he's absolutely can be both. 6'4.5", 315 pounds, really long arms, over 34.5-inch arms. And he's, like I say, he's a freak. The way his movement skills, so the lower body explosion that he has, the range, there's a lot of, with what you want on the edges at tackle, the movement skills that he has, the balance, that's kind of just check the box, and he does it consistently. So if you want to move him inside the guard, I think he can do that. But on the outside, he has more than enough length, more than enough range where he can hold up and gulf rushers. So I think I like that pick for him. I think he's an underrated player.
I mean, they definitely view him as a tackle. I know that. And Peter said it on the record at Friday night. We're talking with our friend Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Few people can break down the draft quite like Dane. Give him a follow at DP Brugler on Twitter and Instagram. One thing I couldn't help but notice, and I'm curious if this is two things. Washington seemed to make a point of going after guys with really high athletic testing, the RAS score. Was that something that was obvious to you also? Or when you get to the end of drafts, are almost all these guys having good RAS scores? That's how you make it to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like a lot of these teams, you just can't help it. You're going to end up drafting these guys that are high traits, toolsy, athletic guys. But I mean, honestly, you look at their, first three picks. I mean, Jayden Daniels, he didn't have to test to know he's a good athlete, but There's no testing information on him. Johnny Newton, no testing information on him. Mikey Sainristil didn't blow it up. I mean, he was good, which honestly I think speaks more towards Sainristil, that the fact that he's not a overwhelming size guy. And then the speed, the workout numbers were good, not amazing. He ran on 4.47 in the 40-yard dash. Usually when you're undersized, you're 5'9" and change, 180 pounds, you better run a 4.3 if you want to go in the top 50 picks. But I think that speaks to Mikey Sainristil and how good of a pure football player he is, that he has underwhelming size, good athletic profile, not amazing athletic profile, and was still able to be a top 50 pick because that's just how good of that's how good of a pure football player he is. But I think after that, you're absolutely right. You look at Ben Sinnott and the way he tested. Brandon Coleman's a freak. Luke McCaffrey tested well. Jordan McGee from Temple, same thing. Dominic Hampton from Washington. We know Dan Quinn, he's had luck in the past with those oversized safeties, kind of tapping into what they do really well. And Dominic Hampton, he could be that guy because he's 6'2.5", 215 pounds, almost looks like a linebacker, but his background's like corner and it's a nickel. And for him to go out and he ran a 4.45 in the 40-yard dash. He's got 39-inch vert, just a really toolsy, tracy guy, but the tape's really good as well. And it took until his 6th year to really break out. But, to get him in the 5th round, I thought was tremendous value.
For sure. I want to open this up a little bit further. You get Sanders still, and it's pretty clear he's a slot guy. And I think his size and he said it, Peter said it. Everybody has kind of identified what he's going to be. But Quinn and Joe Witt have found a ton of success developing players in the secondary. And not just top picks, but later picks. What did you think of Emmanuel Forbes last year? And do you think he kind of gets a new lease on opportunity in Washington?
Yeah, and obviously, he's an outlier size-wise, and that's always a risk. When you draft a guy that was so thin and, being sub 170, and it's like, okay, is that going to be able to hold up? But it's easy to focus on that part of it. But when you focus on the fact that he had unreal ball production, it was like, going back to high school, his final 6 seasons, he had 30 total interceptions. He had 16 in high school, 14 at Mississippi State, just unreal ball production. And this past year, for the Commanders as a rookie, it was a lot of up and down. I mean, obviously, I don't have to tell you guys or Commanders fans about that. I mean, it was, corner is just, it's a volatile position just by nature because you're going to lose reps. Especially for young players, rookies that are just understanding the speed of the NFL. But I'm very eager to see how he does this year because I think with a year under his belt, he's a confident kid. I don't think he's going to necessarily, he's not going to be broken mentally. I think he can, rise to the occasion. But taking what he learned last year and, wanting to jump routes and go for the football, but also learning when to be conservative, just walking that fine line. I think he'll have a better sense for that this year. Now, obviously, new scheme, new coach, all that plays a part in all this. But obviously, they're not giving up on Emmanuel Forbes by any means. I mean, I think he's definitely a important part of their future as they build this thing.
Well, if you look at what they've done the last 2 years with Joe Witt and also Quinn, they had one guy have 10 interceptions one year, another guy came back the next year with the same amount, or 9 interceptions, I think it was.
Bland, yeah.
He might want to get happy right now.
No doubt, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the Cowboys the last 2 years with their ability to take the football away was tremendous. So I think that's something you point to and say that's going to be an emphasis for this team is getting pressure on the quarterback, forcing bad decisions, and then letting the secondary and the back 7 clean up with those interception opportunities. And a few guys have a better sense for route recognition and just the ability to close on the football and pick the ball off than Emmanuel Forbes.
For sure. I think with Forbes, there was probably a really rough period of transition to the physicality he had to bring and maybe wasn't ready to bring. And maybe he sat for a little while and that opened his eyes up. That's going to be an interesting kind of subplot to watch. Zooming all the way out to league wide, was the biggest head scratcher to you Penix to the Falcons? Was there something else that stood out to you? I kind of like it from Atlanta there. I recognize that he's going to be 27 when Kirk's guarantees are out, but if he's the right guy, nobody's going to be mad if they go from Kirk right to Penix. I don't know if there was other league-wide stuff that really made you scratch your head.
If they drafted Penix in the 2nd round, I would get it a lot more. But it's like you have a top 10 resource, and you're going to go go to that locker room and look at everybody in that locker room and say, hey, we could have helped this team right now for 2024, 2025 with an impact pass rusher or a top flight corner or run with Dunze. I mean, we could have done so much with a top 8 pick. Instead, we went with a position that we hope doesn't get on the field for at least 2 years. That's hard to explain to the locker room. So not even just the fan base or everybody else, just explaining that to the guys in that locker room. That's tough to do. And I don't know. I don't understand the process. I don't like. On one hand, I get throwing as many resources as possible at the most important position in sports. Like on just the surface level, that makes sense. I just, with the opportunity cost and using a top 8 pick in a draft where you wanted to be picking top 10 this year. The amount of blue chip talent from offensive line to receivers to, across the board, you wanted a top 10 pick. And instead they chose a quarterback. And that's not even getting into the evaluation of Michael Penix. I mean, to me, Michael Penix was a 2nd round pick. And, I think in order to draft, and this goes for Bo Nix as well, in order to draft Bo Nix and Michael Penix in the 1st round in the 12, you're telling me that these guys are going to be top 12 to 14 quarterbacks in the NFL at some time in the next few years. And I have a hard time getting on board with that. I have a hard time believing they're both going to be there. And so it's going to be fascinating. I mean, watch it. Kirk will get hurt week 3. Penix come in, tear it up, and the Falcons look like geniuses. But yeah, they're hoping that Cousins leads them to the playoffs, and it becomes really something that we stop talking about because they keep winning. But it was certainly a head scratch. I'll put it this way: I mentioned that top, my favorite draft class is 1 through 32. 32, 1 was easy, Chicago Bears with, the 1 and 9 picks that, knocked it out of the park. 32 wasn't hard either. The Falcons, they were my least favorite draft haul this year with what they did.
It was an interesting move. I will have to follow up with you later in the month. Or
I actually like it
month.
though, Dane. I mean, to be honest with you, I like it.
Time will tell, right?
I'm being honest with you. We don't know how that Achilles is going to hold up. And we can say what he wanted because if he didn't have injuries, that dude would have been probably as high ranked as any of those other quarterbacks. He's the best passer in the draft.
Hell of a season.
He's as aggressive as a passer as anybody in this class. It's just the lack of creativity really bothered me. The national championship against Michigan, they got after him and he didn't have many answers. So. He's a polarizing player for sure. A lot of teams had day 2 grades on him, but obviously the Falcons.
Not the Falcons.
Yeah, and time will tell, right?
Yeah. Yep. All right, we'll check back with you soon because he's already got a 2025 mock. Wow. And your Washington Commanders taking, I got no idea how to say this, Tatara McMillan. Dane, we'll do that next month, dude. Thank you for the time.